You're looking here at Hondo, Texas. That's the main street there. That's a Highway 90 actually. And we're going to be painting into a very historic homestead here. This is the homestead of the pioneer, Texas pioneer, actually came from France by the name of Henri Castro, who founded this town of Castroville, Texas. And you can see the marker here, historic marker in the foreground, where it tells us about Henri Castro and the history of this community. He was actually born in 1786 in Bayonne, France. He was from a prominent Jewish family of Portuguese descent, and he immigrated after he had served Napoleon in touring the part of France where he lived, and then he became one of Napoleon's guards actually. He came to the United States in the 1820s, late 1820s, and then he stayed there in Providence, Rhode Island with a French consulate. And then he set his sights on Texas. So he came down to Texas, and he got with Sam Houston, who was the president of the Republic of Texas in 1842, and also the Texas government. And they issued him a grant of 1 million acres on condition that he could bring 600 families from France to settle the Texas frontier. And of course we're about 32 miles from San Antonio, just west of San Antonio, which was the main Spanish hub and Texas hub under the Mexican government. But Henri Castro came down here on the Medina River, and the Medina River is right behind his house here. It runs right behind his house, and he founded this community in 1844 of Castroville, named after himself. And this is where he actually built this homestead that you're looking at in 1845. So it's been here for quite some time, quite a number of years, as you can see. And there were other buildings associated with this particular home of his, but for the most part we're just honing in on his home. As you can see, very historic, still here after so many years, so many Indian raids. In fact, this town was raided so often it just almost didn't survive. Now, part of his condition was to be granted 1 million acres to bring in the 600 families was he also had to found 4 towns, which he did: Vandenberg, Quihee, and D'Hanis. And a couple of those no longer are in existence. They're just ghost towns. Now, D'Hanis is still there. The old D'Hanis, of course, is not there, the original settlement, but the new D'Hanis, which is about a mile away from the old historic D'Hanis, Texas, which we're heading to after this, he did found in about 1847, and he lived up until 1865. So he lived from 1786 to 1865. In November, he was headed back to France via Mexico and didn't quite make it. He died in Mexico, in Monterrey, Mexico actually, and is buried there to this day. Nobody knows where his grave is, but this is where he lived when he was here in Texas on the wild Texas frontier, when this little community was subject to Native American attacks, depredations, hunger, cholera, you name it. The Texas frontier back then was just unsettled, wild country. And so we're panning away from his homestead and kind of give you a view of the area around his home, what it looked like, his block, you might say. So this is one of many historic sites in Texas of a real pioneer, a guy who took the bull by the horns, as we say down here, and made something of it. And this community is a thriving little metropolis of just a few hundred souls to this day. So we hope you enjoyed this. And again, there's the marker. It says the homestead of Henri Castro, a naturalized American of French origin, befriended the Republic of Texas and became interested in settling here. In 1842, he was given authority to establish a colony of Europeans in southwest Texas. He succeeded in obtaining some land here on the Medina from a 1766 grant made by Charles III of Spain. He recruited 485 families and 457 single men, mostly Alsatians, using his personal wealth. He cared for the colonists as he thought they were his children in 1844. He had the Castroville town site platted, reserving as his homestead this block next to the courthouse site in the center of town. He erected a stone dwelling and outbuildings and planted an experimental garden to discover crops suited to the locality. Bringing his wife Amelia, Matthias, and their 4 foster children from France, he lived here permanently as a moral obligation. He continued to direct the state affairs for his colony, although he had impoverished himself. On the eve of a trip abroad when the Civil War was beginning, in 1861, Castro and his wife deeded the homestead to their adopted son Lorenzo Castro, but he died at Monterrey, Mexico soon afterwards and was buried there. Lorenzo sold the homestead in 1872. So that's what's on the commemorative plaque, in case you can't read it from this distance. But once again, give you a final look at the Henri Castro homestead, Texas pioneer via France.